wide range of topics of interest, including sacred geometry and psychedelic experiences and transforming the world through them. I'll let him speak about that now. So here he is, Harlan Emil Gruber. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Frank, for having me here again at Burning Man 2024 to share on my work. And I usually present my work with a lot of images, so today is going to be a completely different one, off the cuff, that's going to relate more to what Palenque Norte is about and the background of my work and the overarching aspect of it. So the title of this talk is the title of my book, Portal to the New Earth, which explains the 20 years of building portal installations here at Burning Man in the Deep Playa, and also my even longer standing interest in creating future eco-cities and eco-villages. So I usually start the talk or referencing back when I learned about Buckminster Fuller in around 1979 when I was 20 years old, and shortly thereafter Paolo Solari, because those are the people that relate more to my interest in these ecologically regenerative, sacred city designs that I've been studying my whole life. But for today, we're going to jump back even further when I was just first went off to university and living on my own and having my own experiences, and encountered using LSD to go see the Grateful Dead play in 1977 at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. Pretty epic. And in conjunction with that, though, I was reading some pretty interesting material, most notably The Cosmic Trigger, written by Robert Anton Wilson, who was very close friends with Timothy Leary. And in the mid-70s, Timothy Leary was incarcerated in jail. He only got out in the later 70s. And what Robert Anton Wilson did in the book, The Cosmic Trigger, was share a lot of Timothy Leary's research and ideas that he had developed through using psychedelics. Timothy Leary had an acronym for it back then, which was SMILE, Space Migration, Intelligence Squared, and Life Extension. But beyond that, he was also talking about the evolution of consciousness through these 4 terrestrial stages and 4 extraterrestrial stages. And I'm not going to go too much into it, but needless to say, learning about all of this, what understanding of expanding consciousness through psychedelics really set me on a path. And Timothy Leary actually came and spoke at Georgia Tech, where I was studying at the time in 1978. So I got to see him. He had just recently gotten out of jail, and it was really inspiring having just read this book, The Cosmic Trigger, and now getting to see him speak in person. And that was a major junction in my life, because after seeing that and hearing everything he had to share, I was like, what am I bothering going to school for? I just want to go out to California and experience things. So I did drop out of Georgia Tech, where I was studying electrical engineering for audio engineering, and I lived in a van in California in 1979, traveling around. I got to see Timothy Leary speak a few more times at the UC Santa Cruz, and I think even he may have been in Esalen that year too, where he passed through there at Big Sur. So, he was a major inspiration for me. And, of course, he advocated the use of LSD, but it wasn't so much the substance, it was about the expansion of consciousness. And that's what my work that I started to do here at Burning Man in 2004 is about. Even in one of the earlier interviews and videos, I'd like to say that being able to experience the portal installations could be conducive for an experience similar to what a psychedelic experience could do. And that is the intentions of what I design and build, is to create these environments. I call them evolutionary interfaces, and ways to evolve consciousness so that we can actually all choose to live in a much more sustainable, harmonious, sacred way on planet Earth. And so that really set me on my path. So shortly thereafter, I did go back to school for a couple of years, and I came across Buckminster Fuller's synergetics. I wasn't studying that information at the time. I was actually going back to try to get an audio engineering, electrical engineering degree at the University of Miami. And at the house that I was renting a room in, sitting on the coffee table was Buckminster Fuller's Synergetics, Explorations in the Geometry of Thinking. And I think, I don't have the exact title, I usually have these slides and I get to show the cover of the book, but it's also about metaphysical, not just physical, but metaphysical. So Buckminster Fuller really started sitting around my path where, he did say how we could design and build for all of humanity in a much higher level if we just switch from from weaponry to livingry was one of his terms. So, but I really felt like studying engineering just didn't jive with me, so I dropped out of school, moved to New York City with my friends from Long Island to start a new wave rock band called The Kind, and was working, driving a taxi and trying to make it, playing at CBGB's from like the early 80s. There happened to be a show down in the Soho section where all the art galleries were, exhibiting the work of Paolo Solari. And it was these incredible scroll drawings that wrapped around the whole room that depicted his concepts called arcology, which is architecture and ecology integrated together into these three-dimensional megastructure cities. And at that gallery, I bought a copy of his book that was published by MIT Press in actually 1969. It's called Arcology, City in the Image of Man. And his whole concept is that cities can be built and grow like a living organism in 3 dimensions. And he was, very much against the suburban sprawl, 2-dimensional sprawl. And so with that inspiration, after my rock band really didn't work out, I found Parsons School of Design, and I went there to study environmental design, and thinking I could, really dive into this kind of future environmental design work. But as it turns out, when you go to schools, it's pretty normal stuff where they're just teaching Frank Lloyd Wright and Corbusier and all the standard architecture. So while I was there, though, I actually did an independent study on future environments where I researched all the really inspiring people doing similar things to what Paolo Solari was doing. Most notably, Bruno Taut was a German expressionist in the around World War I era that he was talking about how we could build crystal cities on mountaintops and how humans could be the physical organs of the earth that work to beautify the earth for all living things in a very spiritual way. So another thing that happened while I was at Parsons, though, is you learn about the golden ratio, which is a very underlying principle that nature uses in all of its designs. And of course, throughout all the ages, especially in Greek and Renaissance times, all of the designs of paintings and architecture can be seen to be employing golden ratio. So at that time, I came up with this shape that was 100% using the golden ratio. And I just made a little paper model and packed it away. So mind you, I went to Parsons from 1983 to 85 and got my degree in environmental design. And again, once I finished studying there, I was like, I don't know if I want to live in New York. I got another van and I drove all over the US for 9 months, exploring the West and doing similar to what I had done in that year, 1979, when I first, saw Timothy Leary speak and traveled around. So that's something that I've done a number of times. So this is now 1986. I'm traveling, living in my van, and I was thinking to maybe get an architecture degree from Southern California Institute of Architecture, which had a future environmental architecture program. And one of the professors there had worked very closely with Buckminster Fuller, and he was living up in Ojai, California. So when I went to visit the school, which at that time was still in Santa Monica, it's now in downtown LA, and it was at that time it was also led by Glenn Small, who was one of the people I featured in my future environments paper that I used for my senior thesis at Parsons, where he has some very visionary ideas similar to Paolo Solari's, called the biomorphic biosphere, 3-dimensional city design. So I met with Glenn Small, I toured the school, and they were like, you have to go talk to Tony Williams, who is good friends with Buckminster Fuller. And I go up and visit Tony in Ojai, and we became very good friends. I've been friends with him his entire life. He did pass away in the fall of 1983. Or was it 82? Yeah, anyway. Minor detail. But I go up there and I say, I'm thinking to go to school. And he's like, don't waste your time going to school. And by the way, he said, do what you want to do. Don't be studying. You don't need that. And he said, by the way, there's this place here in Ojai called the Ojai Foundation. And I go up there, and it's this amazing little community living up in the upper Ojai Valley, and they're hosting all kinds of workshops. A lot of it's on Buddhist teachings and Native American Council teachings. But ironically, so I said, hey, I want to stay here, and they gave me a work-study exchange, and I lived there for a month in the spring of 1986. And in that month, there were 2 specific workshops. Robert Anton Wilson, as I mentioned, I read his book, The Cosmic Trigger, that set me on the path. He just did a little 2-day workshop on his work, so that was really cool to get to meet him and see him speak. But then the most epic thing was a 5-day retreat in Joshua Tree. It was called The Monument then, with Terence McKenna. And he was just coming onto the scene at that time in the mid-'80s. So I got to meet Terence and spend 5 days with a group of 40 people out in Joshua Tree. And what's interesting is that I was at this retreat in Boulder in like 2010 and met some people that shortly thereafter said, hey, were you in Ojai in 1986? And I'm like, yes. I go, well, there's on the Psychedelic Salon is a Terence McKenna talk, and you're on it talking with Terence. And if you go to the Psychedelic Salon, and it's a 4-part, 4-hour Terence McKenna talk that is epic. He covers every single subject that he touches on in all of his talks. And because it was hosted by the Ojai Foundation, Lorenzo introduces the talk saying that it's a talk from Ojai. But I can guarantee you, I was there. We were out in the boulders in Joshua Tree, camping for 5 days with Terence and his wife and kids. And it was an incredible, incredible gathering. And this talk is now very easily accessible. I'm on parts 2 and 3. So it's 249, 250, 251, and 252, called The Rites of Spring on the Psychedelic Salon. So needless to say, aligning with this psychedelic consciousness and, as a tool for expanding consciousness has been a big part of my life. And getting to meet Terence and then becoming friends with him, until he passed, seeing him speak many times was, really special for me. I felt very aligned with all of his work. I have all of his books. I've, like I say, seen him talk quite a number of times. So I feel like, that's a very important part that I don't normally ever talk about in my presentations on Portal to the New Earth, because it's more of a backstory rather than what the work's about. So now I guess we could just jump right ahead, although I don't go into the details of my whole life, because here we are at Burning Man, and here I've been building these portal installations for 20 years, since 2004. But I started coming to Burning Man in 1999 with friends from Taos, New Mexico, where I was living at the time. And, coming out, and I started to build these cool, like, chopper bicycles, because I like building things and just cruising around Burning Man, but I love climbing on sculptures and seeing all the epic art here. It took a good few years, but finally, in the winter of 2004, I'm like, I'm going to build a big installation for Burning Man 2004. And I'm like, I know, I'm going to build that thing that I designed at Parsons in 1984. That's this golden ratio shape. And it didn't have a name, I just called it like a thing, but it's got a circle cut through it in elevation, and in plan, it's a rhombus. But a rhombus is what we call a diamond in playing cards. That shape that you see on a card, in playing cards, is the diamonds is a rhombus. So the piece got named the Diamond Portal. And I decided though right away, because Burning Man has been laid out like a clock, and you always tell people where you are or where the art is by the time on that clock layout, I knew right away that the Diamond Portal had to be placed at 11:11, as that's like an activation, synchronistic activation code. So it became known as the 11:11 Diamond Portal. Now we got to jump back though to when I said I dropped out of school to form this new wave rock band in 1980, because I came from a background, new wave was new then, but my background was like really hard rock. Jimi Hendrix, Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, The Who, Cream, like really loud, intense rock. And so one night, late at night, I'm playing my bass guitar and getting it to feed back. And I'm like, I wonder what the lowest note I can get the bass to feed back. And it was one of those hollow body Guild Starfire basses, which are really cool because both Jack Cassidy and Bill Lesh had used those in the early days of their psychedelic rock music. But it's hollow body, so it really feeds back. But I got it to feed back by leaning it against the amplifier, detuning the strings until they're completely slack. So they're subsonic. If you pluck the string, it would just go blah. But the amp is driving it now because it's feeding back. And it starts to make this random, chaotic, pulsing, purring sound. And it's like random, almost like this talking sound. And I'm like, that's cool. So after my new wave rock band broke up and I'm going to Parsons, I'm in art school, I'm like, I'm gonna do that feedback thing as like an art installation sound sculpture. And I came up with the name for it as the Quasar Wave Transducer. And I'm really into astronomy and space and stuff, and quasars are like the most distant, most powerful astronomical objects discovered, and they still kind of are. They're billions and billions of light years away. And so this quasar wave transducer, though, is just basically a subsonic analog feedback device that I only use 2 strings, the 2 lowest strings. I've never measured the frequency, but you can estimate it, that it's in the range of brain waves and Schumann resonance. Schumann resonance, 7.8 hertz. Brain waves are in single-digit frequencies. But the amplifier and the speaker actually don't reproduce, and you can't experience those subsonic sounds. You can only really hear down to 20 hertz, but mostly amplifiers and speakers really only go down to about 30 hertz, and that's a pretty deep bass note. So the sounds you're hearing are all the harmonics of these subsonic sounds. And I performed it around New York City at a few different events, and people, it was cool, it was weird, but it really didn't have much impact. You were like, yeah, that's cool. So then when I designed and built the 1111 Diamond Portal for Burning Man, I said, I know, I'm gonna put the quasar wave transducer inside of it, hide it, so it'll vibrate the whole structure. So that is what I did for that 2004. And I also put it on a timer. So it shut off for 11 minutes, 11 times a day. So I brought the 1111 into the 24-hour temporal time cycle of each day. And then the one final interesting thing about this giant, it's kind of like a monolith, like from 2001. So my first thought is, I'll just paint it flat black like the monolith. Then I'm like, that's just gonna get dusty, it's gonna be hot. And they're like, well, what color should I paint it? So now we jump back into the mid-90s, where I was fortunate to meet a few different people that had DMT. Actually with Terrence, I never got to do the DMT on that trip. I didn't do DMT until mid-90s, when I was at a rainbow gathering out in Wyoming, and we're sitting out in the woods, and I got a really good hit, and I went unconscious, and some kind of like leprechaun took me on a tour of the universe, and it communicated to me in colors. And so when I came back from the trip, I had these colors, like it was like that was the information. And a few years later, I was like trying to express that color, so I painted a big panel of this rich chartreuse green. So then 2004, I'm building the Diamond Portal in my studio out in Taos, New Mexico, and hanging in the studio is this panel of chartreuse green. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna paint it that chartreuse green then. And I said, well, the inside of the portal, I'll do a complementary color. So it's this rich maroon red. Well, I had no idea what this shape would look like when I built it big. And once it was finally built and you sat in that central space, or you looked up at that opening, it's a perfect cylinder, but because it's a tapered at the golden ratio, that cylinder makes a perfect heart shape. And of course, green is the color of the heart chakra. And it just came about completely by serendipity, synchronicity, that this was all a heart chakra-based installation. And of course, Dan Winter discovered that when your heart EKG is in golden ratio, it's when you're in a state of coherence and bliss. And that's what the Heart Math Institute has run with their different heart monitors to monitor your heart to get you into these states of bliss. And so here is this golden ratio chartreuse green sculpture placed at 1111 at Burning Man as a key, or I called it a key, to shift the earth into the next vibrational dimension. And I brought it back to Taos, New Mexico, set it up out the crossroads north of town, and on 11/11 we held a ceremony, and this chief Golden Light Eagle, who was convening 11/11 Star Knowledge conferences, just happened to be in town and showed up at sunset and did this crazy Native American Star Knowledge ceremony there. And we left it set up over winter. It got snowed on, and then in the spring, Taos gets huge windstorms. And it was staked to the ground, but not staked good enough. And it got smashed and blown over in a windstorm, but not destroyed. So that summer of 2005, I rebuilt it like new, and then I built a golden ratio smaller outline version of it. And so when I came back to Burning Man in 2005, I placed the diamond portal again a mile out from the man, and then dividing the mile at the golden ratio, I placed the golden ratio smaller outline version of it. And then, because Burning Man is very gift oriented, I made these little diamond portal pendants that were the 11th golden ratio smaller than the full-size one. In the full-size one, I wanted to make it really, really big, but out of practicality for transportation and expensive materials, and especially all of my portal installations are pretty much based on the size of the materials you could buy. So plywood comes in 4x8 sheets. I made it 16 feet tall, to be double 2 sheets of plywood, and it was a great size. And that made the central cylinder just a little over 6 feet, which is, of course, the golden ratio of the smaller of the golden ratio of the 16 feet. And so now we've got the golden ratio brought into the entire layout of Burning Man. So we're starting to work energetically with the entire plan of the city. And my friends who helped me bring it there those 2 years in a row, I save everything. I've got stuff I've saved since I'm a little kid. I just love collecting and saving things. And I like to be very efficient. My friends were like, "You've got to burn it." I'm like, "Well, you can't just burn it in place. You have to it's very difficult to burn things here at Burning It. You can't just set it on fire. And you have to clean up the ashes. You have to put a burn platform down." But I came up with this plan on the last night to make these big wooden wheels, and we pushed it into the temple fire on the last night. So that was the end of and there's a great video documenting that. So you can see that on my YouTube channel on the 11/11 Diamond Portals. The Diamond Portals burned. Right after that, I'm up in Marin at the solstice ceremony at Solstice Grove, and this person there is like, "Do you ever think of placing your portals on PowerPoints or ley lines?" And I'm like, "Well, I've studied a lot about the Earth energy grid in a book that came out in 1987 called Anti-Gravity and the World Grid." And it's a collection of essays. It's published by Adventures Unlimited, and it collects all these amazing authors on ley lines and Earth energy grid. And one of the authors was Richard Levitin, who wrote a book in 2004 called The Emerald Modem, A User's Guide to the Earth's Interactive Energy Body. And he, through his meditations, contacts these higher dimensional beings that gives him all of this information on all these energetic features of the Earth's energy body.
What was his name again?
Richard Levitin, The Emerald Modem, The User's Guide to the Earth's Interactive Energy Body. So this now set me on the path of designing the next 2 portal installations. Right on the cover of the book is a picture of the Earth surrounded by a green cube, the exact same green color that the diamond portal was. And in the beginning of the book, he explains that there's a green cube that surrounds the Earth as the totality of the Earth's energy body, but there's also a smaller green cube within every human's heart chakra as a way to connect our heart chakra to the totality of the Earth's energy body. And mind you, it's a green cube pointing up. So a vertex is pointing up. It's not a cube sitting flat on a face like we normally think of cubes, but it's pointing up and down. So that inspired the next piece. So I moved to 12-12, just off of the 12 o'clock axis, which if you think about it, that's where the heart in your body is, just off of your central axis to the left side. And so I came out with that, and at that year I built both the outline version and the solid plywood version of them. And the outline version shows how I deconstructed it to have a cube octahedron in the center of it. And the cube octahedron, or as Buckminster Fuller calls it, the vector equilibrium, is the basic unit of the 60-degree geometric grid, where a cube is a basic unit of a 90-degree grid. The cube octahedron is made of 8 tetrahedrons pointing in and these other octahedrons. So it shows the relationship of the 60-degree grid to the 90-degree grid. And that's what Buckminster Fuller was all about, the 60-degree grid being what he calls the isotropic vector matrix, is how the universe actually operates, and it has structural integrity because every point is exactly 1 unit distance. Another way to understand the isotropic vector matrix is through the closest packing of spheres. And on my other videos, you can see all of this geometry explained in detail with visuals and animations. But what you do is you take a single sphere, and on a plane, you can just pack 6 more around it, and then 3 more below, 3 more above it, through if you're stacking oranges or apples, that will naturally form into this shape. And when you connect that central sphere to all of those surrounding 12 spheres, it makes this cube octahedron, which is the outer shape. Once you have the centers connected to the center, it's 8 tetrahedrons pointing in. And that's what he calls the vector equilibrium. So that was the second year of building these portals at Burning Man. So I finished reading the book, and towards the end of the book, he talks about etheric blue dishes being not physical, but etheric, and miles across, but these huge blue dishes that collect cosmic energies to distribute into the earth. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool? You go out to Burning Man and you go into this big blue dish and you just feel like you're floating in the sky. But it would be really hot in the daytime. You need something in the middle. Well, the next chapter in the book talks about the evolution of the Earth's grid line, the energy body, and it evolving to this geometric shape called an icosahedron, which is the combination of both an icosahedron and a dodecahedron. Similar to how the cube octahedron is a combination of a cube and an octahedron, 2 of the 5 platonic solids. This shape is the other 2, the tetrahedron being the 5th of the 5 platonic solids. So anyway, like I say, you can reference all of this video information, animations on this geometry, but I just feel for this talk without the images to reference it is important. So I created these nested geometric structures in the middle of the, and because I was naming, the first one was Diamond Portal, then of course the book was called Emerald, so it was the Emerald Portal, those 2 green ones. Well, now this is a giant blue dish, so I called it the Sapphire Portal in the naming nomenclature using stones that are the color of what I'm doing. And so this big 60-foot diameter, 10-foot high sky blue dish with these nested geometries, where I built the icosahedron as a metal structure that had mirrors on the triangles. And what was pointed out to me is that that shape has 20 triangles and 12 pentagons. Now mind you, this was in 2007, still many years before the 2012 shift point. And it's a shape that's a 2012 shape, but it's also a shape that is embodying the evolution of the Earth's vibrational energy body. And so it was a space to go inside of, and of course throughout the entire wall and in the central dodecahedron, there's a central little dodecahedron that you can lean against to look up into the mirrors of the icosahedron, and then the shade structure was an icosahedron. So I had all 3 geometries nested. And that's where I kind of learned that these portals are multidimensional vibrational energy body alignment tools. And so it was a very successful piece that was there in 2007 and returned in 2008. And in 2008 is when we started to host sound baths in it. I met with Jonah Kai and we did these galactivation sound healing. And ever since then, I've been working with all kinds of sound healers to do sound healing in the space along with the quasar wave transducer. So that's the end of the book. I had no more ideas, but also in 2008 is when I started what I call the Portal Collective, and a friend in that was like, well, the next shape should be a stellated dodecahedron, which is another relationship of those 2 geometries. And he said, well, since you've already done the heart chakra and the blue is throat chakra, this one should be third eye chakra. And then we painted the inside, that chartreuse of the heart chakra, so that it was connecting the third eye chakra back to the heart chakra in this geometry. So, I feel like there's the evolution of these, it keeps going on and on, but then touching on what I did for 2012 was a video by Gruber Melchizedek called Birth of a New Humanity. He references this evolution of the Earth's energy body, which is another shape that is one step removed from that icosahedodecahedron. It's a 30 rhombic-sided shape called a rhombic triacontahedron that contains the icosahedodecahedron and all those other shapes. And if you look at these Earth grid ley line maps, you can clearly see that the rhombic triacontahedron is the major feature of it. So then I felt like that should be turquoise to reference the higher heart chakra. So in 2012, I made the 1221, which is where I located at Burning Man, which is referencing the December 21st of 2012. But in some ways, 1221 is the next step after 1111, where it's a mirror number, and so you mirror the 11 to 12, but then it's not 1212, it's actually 1221. So that was what I did here in 2012, turquoise portal. 2013, I came back with a variety of portals as a little retrospective. Starting in 2014 through 2016, I came up with this opposite of the sky blue sapphire portal. I made a playa colored wall angled the opposite way so it offers shelter. And the first year I collaborated with a group from Texas that was making a piece called the Pachamama Portal. That was the name, it was already a portal. And it was totally aligned. It had sound healing instruments built into it. It had a dodecahedron in the center, had a giant inflatable image of the earth above that, and these beautiful hammocks. And then we put the wall around, the playa colored wall around it, and it was at 1144 in the deep playa. And the next year I came back, I collaborated with another longtime Burning Man artist, Kathy D'Onofrio, that always puts her art at the furthest point out, 12 o'clock. And so what we did is we just shifted ever so slightly off from the 12 o'clock point, and we called it the 1155 Reformation Portal. And the name Reformation Portal came out of an interview with Larry Harvey that was in, I think, Bloomberg, called Billionaires at Burning Man. And at the very end of the interview, Larry Harvey says, our mission is to reform the 1%. And that is kind of my mission with my portals, is this reformation of consciousness where we can actually use all of our money and resources to start to create the most sacred, beautiful, harmonious world there is. So by then, this is now 2015, Burning Man's getting a little oversaturated, a little crowded everywhere you go. The population has grown to its current limit of about over 70,000 people. And so when I came back in 2016, I'm like, I need to get away from this. Even deep playa, too much going on. It's not conducive for the experience of the portals. So I said, I know, I'm gonna move all the way to the far side at 144. And 144 is a sacred number, 12 times 12. It's in the Fibonacci sequence, but it's also referenced by a lot. I think there's a biblical reference for 144,000. But in the New Age community, they talk about 144,000 light workers coming to shift the consciousness. So 144 is an ideal location for the portals, and that's where I've been placing them ever since. And it's really nice out there because it is kind of the least populated area, and the art department does keep it not too populated, so that you really have to go deep playa and find these installations. So in 2016, I came back and I named it the Alcyon Portal. I wanted it to be a little subtle with this star, reference, but Alcyon is the brightest star in the Pleiades, and I put at the entrance the original diamond portal outline, and I put also in the center of it that icosahedodecahedron from the sapphire portal. And it was really just a wonderful space. And I like to think of these portal installations being a place here at Burning Man where you can go to kind of get away from Burning Man. Like once you step into the portal, you're no longer at Burning Man. You're in this beautiful container with that. And then that was the year I started to use pre-recorded sounds of sound baths, such as the Tibetan bowls that I've been working with. The 33 Bowls is an incredible recording of Tibetan bowls. And I have a number of different sound bath recordings, but 33 Bowls is hands down by far the best. And so I use that, and that's what is here this year. But before we get to this year, so that was 2016. 2017, I had plans to make this stellated rhombic triacantahedron, which is actually a compound of 5 octahedrons. But I didn't have the means and ability to fabricate this new project. So I just took the original amethyst portal, that was that indigo third eye one, and I repainted it to the turquoise color one and brought that out in 2017. 2018 I took off. 2019 I came with another friend's art installation. We all know that 2020 and 21 didn't happen, although I actually started collaborating with the South African intuitive Maria that I had met in 2018. So in 2019 we met. She had gone to Burning Man in 2018. She was camped like a couple of blocks away from me, but we didn't know. We knew each other, but we didn't know we were both at Burning Man. So after Burning Man, I met with her and we decided to work together. So she designed this, and because she was guided to be at Burning Man to help heal the negative energies that are here and help work with the timelines. So I said, I can build a portal so you can focus your work at the portal. So she talked to her guides and we came up with this design that she named the 144 Interdimensional Space-Time Portal, based on a pyramid that's from the Chichen Itza pyramid on the outside, and then on the inside it's an Egyptian pyramid, and then it's surrounded by these arches, but the arches actually signify complete rings. And so this is all explained in, of course, I don't know if I've mentioned yet, but I've just finished writing a book that has all this information in it, and of course there's videos that explain all of this. So we brought the interdimensional space-time portal out to 144 and Deep Playa in 2022. For 2023, I was working on doing this new version of the diamond portal that's a 5-pointed version called the Heart Star portal. It didn't come together, so I took 2023 off. I did try to work on building that piece for Burning Man this year, and not being able to do that, I actually came up with this very, very minimal, small version of that sapphire portal that's called the 144 Sky Portal. And the original sapphire portal was 48 sides. It made it 60 feet in diameter. This one is just 12-sided, so it's about 18 feet in diameter, and it has the Tibetan bowls playing in it, and it's all sky blue inside, and when you go into it, the entrance faces the sunrise, but other than that, it blocks out the entire horizon, and it's this beautiful respite from the rest of Burning Man, where you're just floating in the sky with these beautiful meditative Tibetan bowls playing. And so that brings us up to why I'm here at Burning Man this year. And so I did just mention though that I did write a book that documents everything I've just discussed about all of the portal installations, all of the sacred geometry, the sound that I use in it, and other references to sound such as cymatics and 432 versus 440 hertz, and everything for the sound healing and chanting, because sound is such a big topic and sound healing is such a big topic. I also have a whole chapter on ley lines and earth energy grid and megalithic sites, and explaining all of the portals, and I even hosted an event in Joshua Tree from 2014 to 2019 called Portal to the New Earth at this property that the Garth Bowles had for over 40 years, that was a completely off-grid community called Boulder Gardens. And we came up with that name together, Portal to the New Earth, which is now the overarching name for my book, the website, and my YouTube channel, where I have various interviews with a lot of the different architects, designers, and people that are referenced in the book. Plus, I'll be adding more videos explaining in detail. There are several videos on some of the portals, but not every single one is completely documented. So we'll be adding more of that. And so this is all relatively new work, getting the book out there. I'm working on putting the book into all of the major architecture and design school libraries around the country, and continuing to present this work through talks and sharing the portals. And I am based in Joshua Tree, where that interdimensional space-time portal is set up at the Joshua Tree Retreat Center Institute of Mental Physics, along with that the turquoise amethyst portal, the stellated dodecahedron that was built in 2009. So if you're ever in Joshua Tree, you can get a personal experience of the portals that are open to the public. So I think, let's see, that's about what I have to share today. So I'd like to open it up to any questions.
I don't know that I have questions. I just want to talk to you. I don't really have a question. I got one of your pendants in 05. I met you at the portal.
Oh, you got one of my diamond portal pendants back at the beginning. So that's good. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm camped with Harvey and Yayoi.
Oh.
I was camped with that. I was camped with them and Nick DeWolf in 04. Harvey said you know Nick.
Yeah.
I walked into camp, saw your business card, and just about lost my mind. Because I met you 20 years ago. And
You should put this on the microphone. Hopefully it might be loud enough. But
I met Harlan 20 years ago at the Emerald Portal. No, I think it was. Did you have the pendants in 05 or 04?
But that was the diamond portal.
Okay, that's what
This one.
Yeah, it's definitely that one.
There was no emerald portal.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I got the pendant, and I studied sculpture in college, and my final project was a giant pyramid that you could walk through and stand in the middle, and I had very small speakers with a recorded soundtrack that shifted between, it was a heartbeat on the left and a ticking clock on the right. And I can't remember if it was 5 minutes or however many minutes, but every cycle it would very slowly switch sides. So then it would switch the heartbeat and the time to the other side. And this was my final sculpture project. So I have a very strong identification with the formal shapes, pyramid, triangles, absolutely my favorite.
What's your name?
I'm Space. Can't help it. and if my last name is sometimes Time. You can call me Space or Space Time or Jesse Space or Space Jesse. And I still have the pendant. I think I've brought it to burn every year except for this year. This is 14, and I've brought it with me and worn it every year except for this year, because this year I was going to meet you again, apparently.
And and I don't, it wasn't on the mic when, oh.
So look, I got banded. I'm wearing Nick's finger too.
So, but you did mention another weird synchronicity that when I was studying at Parsons in the summer, I knew some people in Aspen, so I went out to Aspen for the design conference, and I met this really cute girl, Thalia DeWolf. And then in 2004, right after I built the Diamond Portal, I was thinking her name, with a name like Thalia DeWolf. I'm like, I wonder what happened to her. And I Google her name, and it comes up. I find her, and I contact her, and I send her an email saying, hey, I built this Diamond Portal at Burning Man. She writes me back. She goes, I went to Burning Man with my dad, and I saw your Diamond Portal. So just weird synchronicities. And now Space here is at this camp right around the corner. So Nick was responsible for one of these really early art cars that was giant mastodon, mutant vehicle, total mutant vehicle that really caught, that I noticed back then. And then as I'm coming to do this talk today, I see it turn the corner. I go up and go, hey, I know Nick DeWolf. I know Thalia DeWolf. They're like, what? And so that's how Space ended up coming today. So just a little banter on the side, not too much relevant to our talk, but it is actually, the synchronicity is so good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's, yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, good. Is there any, did you have a question?
Yeah, so...
Put it on the microphone so it makes it
For
onto
sure.
the podcast.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. I think you'll love this then. So I'm just, as somebody who's like not familiar with your work, and I did come in, just passing through, so I missed a lot of your talk, but what I gathered was that you are very informed where it comes to like healing frequencies. You mentioned sacred geometry. I see that it also says Portal, your book is called Portal to the New Earth. So I would say, as my question for someone who is new to the topics that you're introducing, what would you say is like necessary foundational information to know. Sorry.
That's good. And you know, it's interesting because you finished the question by saying necessary information. And I think it goes beyond information. And so, but the information I referenced earlier in the talk, how I was inspired by Buckminster Fuller. So I would say that for information, reading like Buckminster Fuller's Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth would be like, you know, great information to understand how humanity can operate the Earth in the most beautiful, sacred way. But I think it goes beyond. We don't need information as much as it's about, and I actually wanted to touch more on this aspect in the talk, so there's a good question to get me to maybe finish the talk off with it doesn't have to be mental, it doesn't have to be information. And like my portals are about an experience. You go inside of this structure that is based on these geometries. It has these very simple colors, very minimal lighting, just enough to see, to be soothing, and then it has that quasar wave transducer that's this vibrating meditative sound in it, and it gives you this experience that hopefully is conducive just to allowing you in some ways maybe to connect with your higher self, connect with the energies, the evolution of consciousness that's taking place. And so I don't feel like it really necessarily has to be so information oriented, that it can just happen intuitively by connecting. And to that end is something I haven't really mentioned too much, but these higher dimensional aspects of ourself and what's going on. So there's a lot of new age things going on, contacting the Galactic Federation, the Arcturians, the Syrians, the Andromedans. I was told I'm from Andromeda. A lot of times when people ask me, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Andromeda, the next big galaxy over. It's a lot less dense than this one, in more ways than one, if you know what I mean. So, we're bringing in these higher cosmic frequencies, but it's also coming from the inner Earth. Like, that whole flat Earth thing that was heavily funded and put out there as like a psyop is actually a really positive thing, because the flat Earth is as wrong as the solid ball, three-dimensional Newtonian physics Earth is. It's just that that's the paradigm we're locked into. We're in a very 3D, rational, logical 3D space where we see things like as billiard balls and things. But reality is multidimensional, hyperdimensional. The Earth is a hyperdimensional object, and these they talk about inside the Earth being like telos, these higher dimensional civilizations and things. And it's not easy to understand that when you're in a three-dimensional way of thinking. No, the Earth is just solid rock all the way through. There can't be a city inside of there. But it's kind of like part of this evolution that's taking place. And so it's of shifting to what we call the new Earth, but also a lot of times they talk about shifting from 3D to 5D. So I don't want to go too much down that rabbit hole, but it's great to wrap this talk up by touching on those aspects, because we didn't really get to that. And I think that that's, in some ways a great way to end the talk, is to leave you hanging and wanting to research a lot more about this idea of the fifth dimensional ascension. And I'd like to then maybe wrap this up, because I've been into this New Age stuff my whole life. And a lot of the New Age stuff is kind of co-opted. It's very flaky. All the Ashtar Command, Galactic Federation, and all these things. And we're in this the current control paradigm, this false matrix, is recognizing that we are shifting. So they've kind of co-opted the ascension information, and they co-opt it by giving you like 80% of saying all the right things, so they pull you in, but then they throw in all this other stuff to co-opt it. So to that end, I came up with many years ago the false co-opted fifth dimension ascension team. And I mean, anyone can be a member of it as long as you are both false and co-opted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to be on the mic for this?
I can just ask the question. So I know you'd like to maybe wrap it.
I know you'd like to maybe wrap it up, but I am interested about the idea or the concept of the fifth dimension. So I think of 3 as spatial and time as a 4th. So the shape is, we could understand the object of the Earth as in this 3-dimensional construct, but it's also moving and co-shaped by the time, and so it's taking up a different path through space with other objects. So I don't know if that's what you infer as the fourth, impute as the fourth. I'd like to hear if you have an essential answer to what the fourth and fifth dimensions are.
Yeah, that's great, because when we think of dimensions, one dimension, a point, two, a line, three, cubes, space, and all, fourth being time. But dimensions, when they're referred to in a lot of these more esoteric ways, is more to be considered vibrational frequencies, not so much linear dimensions of what would be the fifth dimension. So it's more of a frequency of consciousness than it is a dimension of time, of space or time. So that's what, and I do these meditations with the Stargate experience, where they have you meditate in this geometry that they were channeled by Alcazar, and every time they open their meditations, they start at the third dimension and have you just vibrate your Stargate around you up to the seventh dimension, pause there, and then you go up to the 12th dimension. And the 12th dimension is kind of like the cap of the vibrational frequency of our physical universe. There are higher dimensions, and people do reference them, and typically these dimensions are in threes, so then you would go up to the 15th. Also, the dimensions relate to the chakras, and the chakras relate to frequencies. So it's a very convoluted, overarching way of interpenetrating concepts and ideas and frequencies of what the dimensions are, and the whole numbering, why they're numbered and why 12, but 12, we have the 12 dimensions of this physical universe, and 12 is predominant in like the 12 zodiac signs, 12 on the clock. So there's an underlying 12ness to our reality. So, these are real rabbit holes that we could go way down. But I think we've covered so much stuff here, so I'm just so grateful and honored to be included in Palenque Norte's presentation series here at Burning Man 2024. Thankful for everyone who came to see it live, and then of course that it gets recorded, and hopefully lots more people are going to get to check this out. So really appreciate this, and hope this inspires you to jump on the bandwagon to help bring about this new earth, the most sacred, harmonious, beautiful world that we can build as quickly and easily as possible. And I think I want to wrap it up with one of my favorite things I like to say. No one asked me the question, and we didn't talk so much about all these future city designs, and actually my book goes into way more detail about these concepts of these ecological cities. And people say, well, how are we going to get the money to build it? And I like to say, you see that tree over there? Did it pay the earth for the minerals? Did it pay the sky for the water? Did it pay the sun for the light that's shown on it? That's how we're going to build these cities. It's not going to cost any money at all. We just have to set our minds and our hearts to it, and we can do it. And we can do it way quicker than you think is possible. And that's what my purpose is here, to inspire people with all this information. So thank you again.
Thank you, Harlan.
Thank you so much.
This is so weird. I'm hosting your visioning meetings in my camp. Yesterday, no one came except for my camp mates. Today, one person came. But she